All right, so I'm going to make a little bit more progress on this React assignment. And just to remember where we are, we've got this application where we log in and then we log out, but it's not really working exactly. Oh, we should open the JavaScript console, by the way. That should always be open. And let me see if I can get that open. There we go. So here we are. Let's let's get the login form working next. So we won't transact with the server yet. We've got our Ajax code ready to go there. Let's stay in here and then get the login form working. And what I mean by working is let's figure out here what inside when we submit the login form here. Here's where we render the login form. When we submit the login form through that callback, we need to send stuff to the send a Ajax request to the server and then get the response. And when we get the response, then then inform the parent that we're logged in, which we do right there. All right, so but we'll send the Ajax request to the server. So we're going to send the username and password in an Ajax request to the server, right? That's what we got to do. So how do we get the username and password? That's the problem. Okay, and there's a couple of ways of doing this, and I don't fully understand all the options myself. Being new to React, but there is one approach that I'm pretty comfortable with, and I'm going to show that to you. And it's called a controlled component. So these input elements will be called be dealt with as controlled components. Basically, we need to send the username. We're going to do something like this. It'll be we're going to end up calling, Ajax, and then we're going to call, what is it going to be? Something like login.php. And then we're going to send the username and password. So it'll look like this. It'll be the username, username, and password, password. All right, that's our object. We want to send the username and password. And then we get a reply or a response, which gets passed into a callback function. And when we get that response, we're going to check to see, if the result is, success. And if it's a successful result, that means they're logged in. So we're going to call this login function here in the parent, just to tell the parent that we're logged in. So the server is going to send us a result that says success, and then that means we've logged in. Else, if the response dot results equals failure, then it means we'll do, just for now, we'll do an alert bad username or password. So we're going to tell them it's a bad user. So the server is going to send a result with a failure in it if there's a bad username or password. Else, if the response dot result equals an error. So if we got an error, then we're going to want to display the error. So we'll use the console. That should be just like in debugging. So console Although it's possible that users could also get this error. We could use an alert there. Maybe we'll use an alert. So it's alert, and we're going to say error colon, and it will add response.msg. So if there's an error set, then we've got a message to display. Else, if it's anything else, then it's we're going to we'll do alert, unknown response, unexpected response has no result. How about this? Response message has no result attribute. So that's for debugging. This is possible when the application is deployed. Maybe there's a network failure and the message can't get to the server. That'll result in an error. Now look, here's the warning. It says it's not defined. So we're going to tell the editor that it's a global variable, that when the script really runs later on, it will be defined. So we're going to put that in there because we're loading that. Look inside index.html. We load that script right there, okay? So that should take care of that. Oh yeah, these are not defined. Username and password. Now, what I want to do, this login form is going to maintain state. And the username and password will be that state. So we're going to get that information out of our state object. So it's this.state.username. And the same thing for the password. When it's time to send the message, it's going to be, we're going to have that as our state. Now, when you have state, normally you would set the implement the get initial state method. So let's do that. Get initial state, and that's a function that React calls to get the initial state of this React object. So we're going to return, and I'll put inside here, actually let's do it like this. Return, make that look good. The username, which is empty, and a password, which is also empty. And there's, a comma there, that's good. That's our initial state. We have no username and password in the text box. Now, as the user enters in this username and password, let's just do this. See, what we're going to do is just temporarily comment this out. And when it's time to submit, right, what we're going to do instead is just see if we have the correct username and password to be sent to the server. So it's this.state.username, and also the same thing with a password. Let's see if we're grabbing that, we're implementing this state correctly. So we're not going to bother implementing and debugging this server-side script yet that we're going to hit with the Ajax call. We're just going to see if we, getting the username and password. So this username and password, see, as the user types in these characters on the keyboard, see that? Each time the user types in a character on the keyboard, there's an event that's triggered here. And it's called onChange. So we're going to have an event there. So we want to send the event to an event handler. and it'll be, I'm going to call it on username. I could say on username change. I could do it like that. How about that? On username change. Maybe that's easier to understand. And the same thing for the password. This is on password change. And then, you know, I'm just going to line this up a little better so it's easier to read. We've got on click, that's a different event there. And then we have this value field set to login. Maybe it's a little easier to look at. Maybe not. So now we have to implement these two change handlers or event handlers. So we do it up here because they are, it's this, see, it's this dot on username change. This refers to the React element, the instance of this React class. That means we need to implement it as a member function. So it's on username change, and that is a function. And when these events happen, the callback gets an event. I'm going to call it E. E stands for event. So when we get that, what we want to do is we want to set our state, our internal state of this login form instance. So we're going to call the SetState function. Now see, when we create this class, we tell it that, oh, when you create the class, make sure it has a getInitialState method, make sure it has an on username change method set equal to what I have here, make sure it has this as its render method. But then this create class function, you know, adds these methods to the class instance, to the element, but it also adds other functions which are part of every element, every instance. And one of those is called SetState. So we can assume that SetState exists as part of this object. So we can invoke it by calling this dot SetState. Now we got to pass in our new state, and the state is going to look like you know, like this basically. I'm just going to save a little typing. It'll be the username and password taken. Oh no, that's just the username, right? So I shouldn't have done that. So it's just the username taken out of the event object. So the event object has a field called target, or an attribute called target, and that's the HTML element that generated the event. So when the user types in a character, here in the text box, the text box element is the target of this event. All right, so the target, e.target, that's a reference to the text box that the user is typing into, and that text box, see, I don't need that. That text box has a value attribute to it, and that's what's typed into the text box. We're going to set the state like that. We do the same thing for password, and this will be password, and this is on password change. On password change. There we go. So I believe everything is set up and ready to go, except this, we don't have a value field down here. And the value field, see, when we render this component, we want to make sure we want the value to come in from the state. So we do this dot state dot username. And we'll need to do the same thing for the password. Value equals this dot state dot password. So when render is invoked, we render these input elements with these values that we're maintaining as part of the state of this component. So it's this value for the login button never changes. Look at now, it lines up nicely. I believe we got everything. So basically we have it stubbed down, and when we hit submit, we're gonna write to the console log, write to the console rather, the username followed by the password. Let's see if that works. Reload this, look for errors. So it's Alice, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. We hit the login button. That's going to cause that that dump out here. There it is, Alice 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got it. We got that working. Those are defined. So that means now what we need to do is implement login.php, send it this username and password, and get a response to see whether the username and password were correct, result equals success, or whether the username doesn't exist or the password is wrong, result equals failure, or if there's an error or something unknown is weird happening there. So we're going to need to create a file called login.php. And now what just happened there? Am I inside here? No, I'm going to move it in there. And let's look at that. This is the login script. So we've got, it's a PHP script. Let's get this thing done. Where is that thing? So it's a question mark. That's it. And inside here, we're going to, we're going to end up, we're going to get something. We get the username and password. So we're going to, extract the username and password from the request object or from the request message, and then and then we're going to check, and check against the database. Is it a correct username password combination? And then we're gonna, let's assume that all is good. What are we gonna do? We're gonna create a response object that maps a result to success. Got it? So that's what we're going to do. We got a simple response, result equals success, and then we need to write that into the body of our response message. And so we use the print command for that. So we print. Now we need to convert this into JSON. So that our AJAX our AJAX function assumes that the server returns a JSON response. So we have to convert this into JSON format. So we do it as follows. We use the function JSON underscore encode, and we pass in this response object. There it is, right there. So this is going to be an artificial login. Well, you know what we can do? Let's test the error handling code. I'm going to go login X, right? So it should say error something, all right, because this doesn't exist. So let's test our error code, our error handling code. So let's reload this and we hit login. Error, there was a problem with the request. All right, so it doesn't say what the problem is, but we are getting that. And then the other, we could also test, well, that's enough of that. Let's test the success. And let's see if we can log in this time, okay? It doesn't matter what we type in here, right? We're not really checking with the database. Oh, let me reload that first. Doesn't matter what we type in there. We're not checking against the database. Error, cannot read property props of undefined. Line 36. All right. Line 36. Here it is. Line 36. What is this? Well, we need to put that in there, but that's not it. Props of undefined. So on submit, this is this.state.username. So what is going on there? It's looking for something called props. Oh, there it is. This.props.onLogin. Ah, so onLogin is undefined. So I think I had that defined last time. This is the login handler passed in from the parent. So we got to make sure that that's in there. Here's onLogin. And yeah, it should be in there. OnLogin equals this dot onLogin, right? That's it right there. So now why is that? It looks like I'm not saved there. So the login form, oh yeah, this is very tricky. That's because this is not, this refers to the global namespace because like, see this AJAX call? When we call AJAX, this refers to an instance of the login form that onSubmit was called against. But the AJAX function returns before our callback runs. And our callback, this function I've highlighted right here, runs at a later point in time. And when it runs at a later point in time, this keyword doesn't refer to the login form instance anymore. This is a very subtle point. We have to tell the function to bind this to the current this, to bind its this to the current this. So this here, you know, this function here, this is a function object right there. I highlighted it exactly. Every character in there, that comprises the definition of a function object. And that function object has a method called bind on it. We're calling that method right there. And what the bind method is it's like it returns another function. It returns another function whose this value equals the parameter that's passed into bind. Well, when bind is called, you know, we're running inside this onSubmit function. So this refers to the login form instance. So we're telling this function object, which doesn't get called until later, to bind its, you know, to have its this pointer refer to the this pointer that's currently in effect here. I know that's a little tricky to understand. That's something that's absolutely essential to understand about JavaScript. So make sure you understand what this means. You have to understand what this is all about and how the different contexts are handle this keyword differently, and then how to overcome some problems by calling this bind method on functions. So read about this. This is essential if you think you're going to do any JavaScript programming in the future. So I got that saved. Now let's try this again. So we log in as ZZZ password, and we hit login, and we're logged in. There we go. And we log out. We're back here again. So, it's a bit artificial, right? I mean, it's still stubbed. We're not hitting the database yet, but we'll do that in the next step. I'm going to pause this right now and then continue in the next video.